Welcome to a new edition of the Daily Fantasy Flex podcast, the PGA edition. This is your host, Bryan Mears. I'm joined by my co-host, as usual, Colin Davey and Peter Jennings, aka CSU Ram 88. In this show, we are going to recap last week's Players Championship, definitely an eventful one. Some names at the top you might not have been expecting, so we'll go over that. And then, obviously, we will break down the AT&T Byron Nelson. Again, I'm joined by Colin and Pete. Colin, what's happening, man?
So that Players Championship went exactly as we all thought. Star-studded lineup, everybody recognizable, and we have Siwoo Kim on top, who, like, if you looked at all of his key stats rankings, something like 200th in everything that we had, like we all saw coming. I think he might have been 0% owned in pretty much everything above a certain price level. I don't even think that the top 10 people who had him still won. It's just sometimes this game is weird. I don't know, but I think we know what we're getting into.
Yeah, he was 0.17% owned in the $4, 0.12% in the $33. Definitely not very highly owned. We had talked about some of these young guys, whether it's Rahm or Justin Thomas, and apparently we just didn't go young enough because Siwoo Kim, youngest golfer on tour at 21 years old, wins the Players Championship. Really awesome tournament for him, obviously shooting that bogey-free last round on Sunday. Apparently, Pete, I know you're into the narrative, he not only did he fly coach on the way out, but he also took the middle seat after winning the Players Championship. Interesting move there. What were your thoughts on the Players?
Well, I wouldn't have done that. I went to flown after winning the Players. What do you win, $1.9 million or something, and a 5-year exemption to everything you could ever need. I definitely would not be going coach in the middle seat. But, it was interesting. Certainly a really treacherous course. The most disappointing thing for me were the MDFs for Justin Thomas, and the biggest just heartbreaker by far was Jon Rahm.
Yeah.
I mean, Rahm just was extremely expensive across the board. I mean, I had him in the Thunderdome, all the tournaments, just invested in Rahm heavily across the board. So that was disappointing, but I guess that's the time he's going to throw up his high round of his whole career in the PGA Tour.
Yeah, Rahm cost me the baby dog leg too. I was happy with a third place finish, but first would have been nice. But yeah, of all of the it's just, I guess everybody's human and he's allowed to have a bad round, but it's just still the way he's playing.
It was just double bogey after double bogey too. Like some of these guys are like Kuchar, for example, screwed himself with a 9 on a hole, and Hideki had a really bad hole. And, you saw people throw up some really crooked numbers, but Rahm was just like bogey, double bogey, bogey, double bogey. I mean, I could not believe he shot, an 82 or something?
82 on Saturday. Yeah,
that's painful. That MDF, I was feeling great. I had 6 of 6 and all my stuff, and then just got crushed by Saturday with Justin Thomas and Jon Rahm, two of my heaviest positions.
Yeah, MDF, definitely brutal. MDF stands for made the cut, did not finish. Definitely brutal that they played so well on Thursday and Friday, and then did not get even a chance to score any fantasy points on Sunday. Very brutal rounds, definitely tilting for sure. Definitely congrats on your third place in the dog leg. Speaking of, I got to give a shout out to one of my good buddies from here at home. Andrew took down first place in the dog leg. Had quite a bit of Rafa, which was ended up being a really good play. So
Albatross helps. Albatross helps
for sure. So he's a dedicated listener. I'm sure he'll listen to this. So congrats, man. Pete, any last thoughts on the Players before we move on? I mean, it was definitely tough. I think the thing that stood out to me just from a process standpoint was Colin predicted that with sort of the pricing a little bit softer and all of these studs in the field, that ownership would be fairly distributed among them. And we definitely saw that. I mean, Dustin Johnson, Rory, Jordan, Sergio. I mean, no guy really had super high ownership in the 30% range. Everyone's fairly distributed. Is that sort of what you're expecting as well?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, there's just a lot of options. So I understand the smoothed out ownership. There's still some chalky plays and obviously a lot of contrarian guys. But it was interesting. Ches Reavie was the guy that I was feeling great about going into, I think on Saturday he was leading, or right up there with the leaders. He was 6 under, doing great. Then he threw up a 9 on a par 4, and after that the wheels completely fell off, and he ended up shooting an 80 or something like that. So it was a great tournament to sweat. Really interesting from an ownership perspective. There's a couple guys you get really low owned. This week's going to be interesting as well. I think there's definitely going to be some mega chalk this week, and I'm curious to see how ownership shakes out amongst some of the other guys, considering we know a couple players in particular are just going to be so heavily owned.
That will definitely probably be the case. Let's dive into this week's tournament. Just quick notes on it. Again, it's the AT&T Byron Nelson. We are in Texas this week. It is at the Four Seasons Resort and Club Dallas, although the tournament is actually in Irving, Texas. So interesting there. But it's been here for quite a while. The actual tournament's been around for almost 75 years now, but it has been at this course for a while, so we do have some data. Sergio took it down last year. He's won this tournament twice now. Brooks Koepka was the runner-up. Stephen Bowdish, Brendan Todd, the winners in 2015. In 2014, interestingly enough, we do have Sergio and Brooks in this tournament, and we'll get into this just a little bit more. But Brooks Koepka, more expensive on DraftKings than Jason Day. Colin, did you expect that we would ever see this this time in DFS golf?
I mean, I guess everybody has their time and just an age differential alone, surely eventually. But like in the year 2017, like, oh man, like that has to be some sort of hallmark for something. Yeah, you're right. I think a brief note on that. We do have a lot of history here, but there was a redesign on this course specifically. So we preach on the 5-year window here and don't look past anything in a 5-year window, and that's why we have this type of thing. So don't get too caught up into way past stuff. I'd stick to the 5-year window for sure. I'm sure your next question is what kind of course is it and all that.
Indeed.
It is a par 70, except it's a par 70 where distance rates out high, which is kind of weird to see. And I think the way that shakes out is distance rates, but it's like still a little bit of a weaker side of the course fit, like maybe half as much as Sawgrass was accuracy heavy. And I guess that makes sense. Like I wouldn't expect to see distance rate out of par 70, but maybe that's why the magnitude course fit is so small. So am I weird? Is that a weird result? Did I get something wrong? Pete, what do you have this rating out as?
I think it's a little bit more of a distance course, which is surprising given that it's a par 70, but makes sense. We do have some history. The redesign will be interesting. I've been looking at some of the holes. That's definitely something I'm going to continue to try to figure out as the week progresses, but we do have some guys who are really comfortable here, and I definitely feel pretty confident in some of these plays for sure.
Yeah, the other sneaky angle here that I'm thinking ahead. So I took a look at weather conditions, and there is supposed to be some chance of rain on Thursday p.m. So there are two ways you can go. One is you play according to the delay and hope the greens are going to be softer Saturday morning, so you take the Thursday a.m., Friday p.m. waves, counting on them getting the better half of the delay. The sneaky one, though, if you don't think the delay is going to happen, is the Thursday p.m. temperatures are going to be something like 7 degrees hotter than the Friday p.m. temperatures. It's equivalent to maybe at least a 3-mile-an-hour wind differential. And in a course where distance rates out, you actually want super shirt-soaking high temperatures. It's going to be hot. It's going to be humid. The ball's going to fly Thursday p.m. And so I'm not sure that everyone looks at wind. Not a lot of people look at temperature. On a course where distance matters, I think it could be a decent hidden angle. But you do have to weigh that against the potential of a rain delay. So I'm not sure how I'm going to play it yet. I'm going to probably decide, the day before when weather forecasts are a little bit better. But it's something to watch out for this week.
Awesome. Pete,
yep, that's a good angle. I definitely think that that's something people don't look at enough for sure.
Awesome. All right, well, let's get into this tournament and discuss the field at hand. We definitely have some studs here. DJ is at the top at 12.5 on DraftKings. He is the heavy favorite. He has implied odds of 18.2%. He had a sort of an interesting tournament. Ended up 12th at the Players' Championship. He shot a final round 68. So that is a pretty encouraging for moving into this week. Didn't ever really come close to winning the tournament, but did end the tournament on a good note. So Sergio, obviously the winner last year, he's at 11K. Jordan Spieth is in this tournament at 10.8. He missed the cut, so his ownership will be fairly interesting to talk about here. And then again, Brooks Koepka 10-2, 100 more than Jason Day. Let's start at the top here and discuss some of these top plays. Definitely some studs. Pete, I'll start with you. I'm sure there's going to be some uber chalk, like you said, down a little bit below this, but what are your thoughts on the top guys here?
I think the top guy's DJ by a good bit. I definitely have him as the number one golfer. And after that, I think Spieth is definitely the clear number two. He is a native here. AT&T is a sponsor, so there's a lot of reasons that he could be the next guy. I actually think I think that's going to be the consensus in terms of the top two. I think I might prefer Sergio over Spieth. And then I think Koepka is probably the fourth guy, just given how well he's been playing recently and kind of the fit and just what he's done. So I think my power rankings would probably be like Dustin, Sergio, Spieth, Koepka, but I think most people are going to have Spieth over Garcia. Colin, I'm curious what you think out of those four guys.
So, I mean, it's no secret DJ's number one. I think the only question is how far is he number one above the rest of the field? I think he'll be number one owned for sure. But I think you get these weeks, maybe 2-3 times a year where the number one guy is just so far head and shoulders above the rest of the field that you almost don't care what his ownership is. And I do think that's the kind of DJ week here. Between fit, he has great history, still playing well, did better than I think everyone else in the field last week at Sawgrass. I think he is, in fact, head and shoulders, and it's going to be tough to find enough equity to contend without him. After that, I don't necessarily agree that Spieth is the number two. I think he has.
I said Sergio. I just think that people are going to think that he's number two.
Okay. I mean, I hope they do, because I actually have, of all the top guys, he's the only one that rates out with net negative course history for me here. I mean, yeah, he did miss that. I know he's a native, and that's not priced in. But in theory, that should have shown up in course history by now if it gives him some sort of edge, and I just don't see it so far. He's missing the cut here at his home tournament. That's death. I think there should be a penalty assigned to that. I have Jason Day as the number two, a decent amount. I mean, a slight amount over Spieth. I have Day and Sergio really close. They both have similar course history. They both have similar fit.
Is that relative to price or just independent?
No, just overall.
Okay.
But I mean, I've always been a little bit more bullish on Jason Day just because long-term adjusted round has just been so high forever that it's really tough to just shake some memory of what we all remember Jason Day was when he was just an absolute monster last year. I mean, one bad round aside, at Sawgrass this past week, I mean, he looked I think the results are still there potentially. Just from a price flexibility standpoint, I probably prefer him to Sergio just a little bit. I also think he'll be a little bit less owned. I hope people are on Spieth. I'll probably be fading him again. But I think if you had to make a case for anybody not in this group, it's probably going to be Jason Day.
Yeah, and Pete, I was really curious that you said that because I would have guessed that Sergio would be the second highest owned guy just because he won the tournament last year and has won it twice, and just recency bias because Jordan hasn't been, particularly amazing over his last couple rounds that he's played. He missed the cut last week. He finished pretty good at the Masters, but the time before that, Houston back here in Texas, he missed the cut there. So I was interested to hear you say that because I would not have guessed that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe that's true. Maybe people would lean towards Sergio. Obviously, he's having an amazing year, winning the Masters, hole-in-one at TPC. His round on Saturday was incredible. I mean, everyone was just a dumpster fire. He shot 6 under, and then he went the opposite way on Sunday with his horrific round. But Yeah, I could see him being more heavily owned. I mean, I think it's really close. I just think that Spieth is always owned for whatever reason.
Yeah.
It's going to be close between those two. I do think Day is definitely the sneaky ownership guy relatively. I think he'll probably be the lowest owned, although he could pass Koepka. I don't know. It's going to be interesting between those two. I do think another guy who's going to soak up a ton of ownership who's near the top is Tony Finau. I think he's going to be a pretty popular play.
Yeah. So when you were talking about the chalk, was that one of the guys that you were thinking about? He definitely stood out for me. Definitely a distance guy, and at 9.2, definitely a higher than he's normally been, but definitely been a pretty good. He missed the cut last week, but if you just look at his results over the last couple months, overall they've been pretty solid. Last time he played here in Texas. A month ago, he finished third at the Texas Open. So definitely seems to be in a soft spot. Was he one of the chalky guys you were talking about?
I think he'll be pretty chalky. I think that he's a guy that a lot of people want to take a look at. Did have a good finish earlier in Texas already with a tie for third. I think he's done well here at this course. Decent history. I think he's been top 10. And I think last year got like 12th or something. So I think he's going to rate well for a lot of people, especially if they're looking at distance. And the only thing that might deter people a little bit is elevated price tag, I guess.
That's fair. Colin, before we move on, what are your thoughts on like the game theory meta game of Brooks versus Jason Day? Like Jason Day has been low owned. He was the lowest of the studs last week. But have we gotten to a point now where people are going to be like, I'm really going to pay $100 more for Brooks Koepka over Jason Day? Or do you think that people are just low on Jason Day and continue to be despite inferior golfers being more expensive than him?
I think we're kind of getting to those like soft tiebreaker things. It's just like, it's kind of like getting a feel for like when people are flexible or inflexible for getting on and off people. Brooks Koepka has just been historically a popular guy in that phenom mold where people just love to roster him because he'll put up monster streaks. And like I think Jason Day has a little bit like I guess a scarier history where people can find more reasons to get off of him between just seeing no tournament where he just puts up monster numbers anymore, so it fades from memory, and all the personal stuff. I think people can talk themselves out of Day way more easier, and combined with that people can talk themselves into Brooks a little bit more. That I think Koepka is going to be a little bit more heavily owned than I actually I don't know. It's going to be close. It'll probably it'll break on some soft factors, but I see Day being like low owned for the foreseeable future. I'd probably put him lower than Koepka this week for sure.
Cool. All right. Well, let's get into maybe some of the cheaper guys that we think is going to be chalk. We obviously mentioned Finau, who is maybe not exactly in the value range at 9.2, but definitely have some guys with distance in a little bit of a lower range. Ryan Palmer could be an interesting guy at 8.2, at least stands out for me. And Ben On is always a guy I think that we're on maybe a little more than the public. Pete, I'll start with you. Who do you think are going to be some of the chalkier value guys that people are going to want to pair to get DJ in their lineup?
Well, I think in the mid-range, there's a lot of interesting players. I think Ryan Palmer is certainly going to be popular at his price tag, especially if you're going a little bit of the distance angle. I think he makes a lot of sense. I like Bud Colley a lot. I'm curious to see what his ownership will be, but he's looking like a great player, especially after the last couple finishes. So I think he's really intriguing. I think he could be somewhat heavily owned. Man, I love Hudson Swafford. I'm curious to see what his ownership will be. I think in the mid-range, people will look at Gary Woodland as well. It's kind of tough for me to identify like uber chalk in this range. Schwartzel might be somewhat popular. I think Charlie Hoffman, his Texas history in the mid-range will make him really popular as well. Ryan Moore, Mark Leishman, two other guys that I like a decent bit. But I don't know who's like number one for sure going to be the chalk. Do you have an opinion, Colin?
What price range are we going to have as our cutoff for like what we're going to consider value here? I think like under like maybe like 8,500. Like I think if I had to pick a single chalky guy, it's probably going to be Russell Henley. Just because he continues to put up huge results. His price tag's cheaper this time. I think he's just going to be the one that pops for sure. I think people really like Ryan more, and I think for that reason, I think he's the closest like we can like see like getting a little bit chalky. The other guy that just keeps on picking up steam and definitely has a distance for the fit that like we've never talked about before is Kevin Tway, who I think, I mean, it's a decent pick. I mean, there's a plenty of other guys like cheaper than him that I prefer, but like I just see him. I think he's going to crack like 17, like maybe even 20% ownership this week. And so if there's ever a clear fade for me, just on value chalk, it's probably going to be over there. Yeah, I think Woodland is going to be like maybe one of the most interesting pivots because like outside of like maybe like Charlie Hoffman, probably has like some of the best course history here in like the value range, definitely has the fit for it. The only X factor that's definitely not priced into either ownership or kind of player models is all of his personal stuff. And I have no idea. I mean, that's just a doozy to try to figure out, is he in the right shape to play golf? I don't think he was at Augusta. Maybe he looked a little bit better in the past weeks. But that'll be, I'm not sure how to handle that one yet, but I think that's what passes for a decent pivot and low owned play.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. One guy that's also a little interesting to me that I'm trying to figure out where his ownership is going to be is Duffner. Obviously, really good course history here.
Chalk. I'm just interrupting. I'm going to say, yep, it's going to be chalk. I think him and Finau are going to be neck and neck. People love to play Duffner for any reason. They're going to see that course history and, never missed a cut. People go nuts over, never missed a cut in course history. Just look at Keimer last week.
Yeah. Are you good with 8-8, though, for him, Pete?
I think it's probably fair at this tournament. I think that's probably about where he should be priced. I think he's fine. He will be chalky, though, so for tournaments, probably a good fade.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. Okay, well, let's jump it down just a little bit here in price range. And there are some guys who seem to fit the course pretty well and have some good course history. Pete, maybe the one guy that stands out the most, just like under 7 or like in the 7K, 6K range, is a guy that I know that you battle with every week in Keegan. So I'm curious to get your Keegan thoughts, Pete.
Probably going to fade. I mean, we'll see. I don't know. I mean, Keegan is just always bad for me. Colin's doing a big dance. Colin's going to be in on Keegan with the distance, I'm sure. You're in on Keegan, Colin, it looks like?
Oh, absolutely. No one's going to be on him. I just for all the hating that we do, he actually pops pretty well in Thunderdome ownership and all the high stakes. So, you probably have a lot more visibility into who's playing Keegan every week. Do you think it's sharp money on Keegan? Do you think it's bad money in the Thunderdome?
Sometimes it's bad. I think there's certain guys that play him a lot. So, I mean, I think that has to be bad if you just look at his results. But yeah, I mean, there's some spots where he's not bad. I mean, he had T15 at the Shell Houston Open. He's getting priced, too, at a reasonable rate. I mean, now that he's in this price, I just didn't like paying, the 8K range for him, That's where I just thought it was
Yeah. 6'9" is definitely, especially with his course history, seems to be at least fine for
yeah, that's on the low end. He's mostly been in the mid-7s up into the 8K range. At 6'9", I think that's a really nice price tag.
For sure. Pete, any thoughts on some of these guys in that range, low 7s, high 6s? Because, I mean, DJ is pretty expensive at 12.5. So, you could just really balance out your lineup around him. Or if you want to go DJ and maybe Sergio or DJ and Tony Finau, you might have to go a little bit cheaper into the Keegan range.
Yeah, I like Swafford. One guy that I think is really interesting that I used to be bullish on big time, and then he had a wrist injury, and he was just god-awful. Couldn't make a cut to save his life and just a total mess, is Smiley Kaufman, who is quietly gone 37th, 5th, and 12th in his last 3 tournaments. I think he's a guy that definitely has talent. I mean, keep in mind, this is a player that is hanging out with Justin Thomas. Spieth, was supposed to be one of the really good young guns. And the injury, it's really hard to quantify, especially a wrist injury, which I know can really mess with the swing and hurt your confidence. He seems to have figured it out a little bit. I'm not sure I'd ever trust him in cash or a a format that paid really deep, that you wanted to take less variance. But for GPPs, I think he's certainly interesting at that price tag. I think some other people are going to find some reasons to get on a couple other guys in this range. I mean, talked about Gary Woodland in the mid sevens. I think Graham DeLette is another guy people could talk themselves into in that price range. I mentioned Bud Colley earlier. Outside of that, I mean, if you want to take a super flyer in the mid sevens, Jamie Lovemark could be that guy. A lot of risk though. I mean, the guy absolutely pounds it, but there's a ton of risk there. So
have we mentioned JB Holmes?
JB Holmes is 79, who I think, obviously played great last week and is just crushing the ball total and driving distance. So curious Colin's opinion. I mentioned a lot of names. In particular, Smiley Kaufman, I think, is interesting this week. I'm sure that your stuff probably rates him pretty poorly just because of that awful stretch of golf he had, but curious if you think he could be reborn at all.
I mean, apparently all it takes is one vacation to Back Bay and to just put the whole thing on Snapchat. He looked like he was having fun out there over spring break. I've noticed his results too, and I'm trying to contextualize that. Obviously, data doesn't know that there's a wrist injury and or making a guess on if he's figured it out or not. And so I agree that, like, the results are there. The reason, honestly, that I still, like, might fade him, though, is because, like, that type of, like, burst of good finishes tends to drive ownership a little bit. So if I had to guess what his ownership is going to be, it's probably going to be around, like, 7-8%. Which is still on the lower side, but, like, if you're going to go for flyers, like,
you're hoping for 1 or 2%.
I think you need to have sub 5% ownership, if not like sub 3% ownership, to really capitalize on flyers. So, I mean, I agree with it. They're like, I have them around, like, basically Grayson Murray's level right now, which, all else being equal sounds about right. I just think his ownership will still be a little bit too elevated because I think there will be a lot of people thinking the same thing. In terms of like first time flyers, like, there's a lot more. I mean, there's some interesting names here down for sure. If you want a low owned course history route that people are going to be priced out of a little bit, and I don't know if 7.5 is a value tier or not, but James Hahn definitely has the fit to get there. If you want some there are some, like, true no-namers that, like, have not gotten any coverage yet that I've been pretty bullish on. Trey Mullinax is a guy who I was definitely bullish on 2 weeks ago. Had an awful first round, kind of fought his way back and kind of finted to miss the cut. But he's going to be a guy that I'm going to have my eye on for a while whenever there's a distance course, because he's a lock for sub 1% ownership. And definitely worth the differentiation. Other guys that I like that haven't played before, Xander Schauffele. I don't even know if he's getting a name right. Xander Schauffele. Do you know what I'm talking about? Is that like anybody?
Yeah.
He's popping in my model too.
I have no idea.
Yeah, he's definitely got the distance for it. Like, him and Trey Mullinax are rating, like, really. They profile similar players for here. No history, but you can definitely count on low ownership. And then other guys in low ownership. I mean. I always seem to mention Michael Kim at a lot of these courses. He's he has some history here, doesn't have a great fit, but is a Texas native. I forget. This is dangerous. Every time I do this and try to make a stab at biography, I end up horribly botching it. So I'm not even going to try to venture out there. But, like, I don't know if this is like if he's close to here, but I know we've talked about Texas native angles in general, and maybe it matters where in Texas you're from. In terms of hometown and all of that. But there could be, I mean, I never not mind playing Michael Kim, especially at the ownership that he usually generates.
Fair enough. Okay. Let's see. Any last thoughts, Pete? Or I guess we can get into some winners here. Yeah, I mean, I guess we could mention FanDuel real quick. Pete, are you playing FanDuel at all? It seems like there's some definitely interesting plays. Tony Finau only 7-7 this week. So
I've been playing FanDuel one lineup every week. I haven't ventured into the GPPs just because I kind of know that I'd have to think a lot more about that. And I still think that there's a lot of reasons. There's a lot of merit to playing them, and I definitely, as the NBA playoffs wind down and get a little less busy, I'll probably take some shots. I did play the Masters with tournaments and whatnot, but just been basically going with the strategy of, hey, play the cheap guys up front and the studs up in the back, and it's been going pretty well in cash. So,
cool.
Yeah, FanDuel, I mean, it's a lot of the same guys. I think Finau is really interesting. If I switch over to FanDuel, let's see here. Obviously, I'm going to try to get Dustin Johnson in the back. It's all about finding these like super, super cheap guys. So Kokrak at 5K, I don't mind that with his distance. I know he's had some bad finishes, but he's not going to kill you if you put him in the front. Graham Dillette, who I talked about earlier, is in that 6K range.
Collie 6'4",
6'4", Swafford 6'2".
Yeah, so many cheap guys.
Yeah, you just got to load up on those guys. And then, in terms of your back end, I think getting Dustin is my number one priority. And then I like some of these guys in the sevens, like Russell Henley at 7'5", Finau, like you mentioned, at 77.
Yeah.
You can definitely mix those in as well. Byung-Hun On's cheap. So, Colin, any favorite plays over there on FanDuel?
I don't know. I mean, these days, I barely look at the players themselves. I'm more interested in the metagame on FanDuel and at what point are you justified and fit? What does ownership have to be for the top guys in the front to differentiate? I think right now, if I had to guess, DJ is probably going to be I would guess maybe 45-50% owned in the front.
3-4.
Yeah,
in the front,
In the back.
In the back.
Yeah,
in the back. And the only question there is, what do you do with it? Do you fade DJ or do you put him in the front? Or he's probably going to be something like 10% owned. From an equity standpoint, you're losing out on a lot in terms of value. But is the ownership going to be high enough to justify it? I've been playing according to yes, to be honest. I kind of flip between just fading the chalk and switching their positions. I think this week with DJ, just for how well he's expected to do, I think it's too much equity give up overall. So I don't actually mind playing DJ in the front this week just to keep ownership low. I think there's plenty of other stuff that you can do to differentiate it, but I think his ownership is just going to be way too high to justify playing him in the back.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. I pretty much always play the studs in the back, but when the guy's clearly the favorite, and he's going to probably, you're right, approach 50% ownership, I do think that game theory might dictate that strategy. So good call there. Let's pick some winners.
Clear, I'm just playing cash too. Mostly in FanDuel, it's one tournament, and then most of the volume's cash.
Gotcha. Cool. All right, well, let's pick some winners and we'll get out of here. Let's see here. I say we eliminate DJ from the pool. Is that fair? It's just such a clear edge.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you. I was going to suggest it.
Okay. Who went first last week?
I did. I'll go second this week.
I haven't gone first in so long. I'll take Sergio.
Okay.
All right. I'll take Jason Day.
Cool. I'll take Spieth. Sure. And
then let's go. All right. Close.
And then let's go under 9K. Is that fair?
Yeah.
I will go. Okay, so Finau's right below that. I will go Duffner.
It's a good pick. I'm going Byung-Hun On. He's due to win something.
Charlie Hoffman.
I love it.
Great history.
Love it.
He's been fighting this year. He's right there. He plays well in Texas.
Awesome. Okay, well, we will end it there. Thank you guys for listening as always. Good luck in this week's tournament, and we will talk to you guys next week.